As soon as I heard it, I immediately turned it off. It took me all the way back to the first time I heard it. Cause it's something that you never forget. Every is a star. The Jamaican cult classic that was sampled on Kendrick Lamar's Wesley Theory. And also opening up Moonlight, one of the best films of the 21st century. I ain't even joking with you right now. But did you know that this song was made in tandem with a classic Caribbean film by the same name? Black people tend to romanticize the 70s. One reason because of that is because it was in the 60s. And another reason is that blackness, the idea and concept of blackness, was finally democratized. We were finally able to be the author of our own destiny to a certain extent. No longer was black excellence monopolized by the talented 10th. We could aspire to be anything that we wanted to be, to a certain degree. And I mention all of these caveats because there's one thing, one word in particular that is held on to its intrinsic value, and that is the word. Must be that censorship that the American right keep talking about. Despite the worth of this word being tied to its context in particular, it tantalizes the tongue and echoes in the air. The taboo of this word has rendered it scarce, and with scarcity comes commodification. And commodification doesn't only mean physical money, you know. It could actually relate to privilege. You may have heard of this industrious young man selling N-word passes to his colleagues. And it don't even have to be like that. It could actually relate to social currency in particular circles. Among the racist white, Freudian slip, it could be a way to identify with your fellow ilk by saying the N-word. And amongst we people who are darker than blue, it can be a way to express a term of endearment nowadays, which just gave me a PTSD flashback to the time that I got gatekept from saying the N-word. Yes, me. You know, apparently I need to go and buy an N-word pass from old boy because, you know, despite my current situation, I can't say the N-word. A uniform face of unfettered terror filled the room. Even my own gal. Wait, you know, this story could put me in trouble. This story will create a lot of tension in the foreign household because I put my gal business on Front Street yet again. It was apparent that I did something wrong. But let me tell you how I get there in the first place. It's freshman year. Me and my gal going to this kickback. Now I's a Bahamian and my gal is African American. So there's some cultural differences between us. So in an effort to quell some of these differences and kill two proverbial birds with one proverbial stone, my gal thought it would be good to introduce me, you know, her foreign man, to her friends at this kickback, which will simultaneously introduce me to the American pastime of kicking back. And let me let you in on a little secret about foreign, you know. Although I might seem very affable, and I am definitely, you know, a people's person. I am also an inveterate misanthrope. I do not like people. They are selfish. Most of their character flaws make themselves very apparent after about a 30-minute conversation, and I'm ready to dip after that. I'd much rather be at home in my drawers with crumbs adorning my chest, watching Netflix, or even dying for the 10th time in Terraria. So in my mind, this is the best scenario. I stay there for 30 minutes, she sip her wine, get wine drunk, and then I have an excuse to take her home. Or at worst, her foreign man embarrasses her and leaves a lasting impression on her friends, thus making us dating difficult. Naturally, Murphy's Law picked the latter. The four reverberated with A$AP Ferg's work, which foreshadowed the complete opposite, that absolutely no work was getting done in this household. I opened the door and I was quickly greeted by an amalgamated aroma of Polo Red and Reg weed. However, I was somewhat elated because after a whole week of the first of classes when the only people around me was pink, I was finally around people that looked like me. Look being the operative word. I was immediately othered as soon as I walked in. Cause you have to understand, when I'm not in an Adidas tracksuit, I look like Carlton, but I fresh, you know. Hey, you can't tell me I wasn't fresh. Big man, listen. You cannot style a Caribbean. One thing Caribbean man could do is dress. However, I stuck out like a dog that lost his favorite tennis ball when he stuck his head out the window. But once we started talking and, you know, they got to know me, things was getting a little bit better until I made an attempt to be funny. You know, I would think that I'm funny. You agree that I'm funny, right? Okay, but you know, when you try to be funny, you know, that's a problem. You know, that don't go over so well. I was telling a story just like this one, and I said the word everyone looked like I killed each of their dog respectively. Like, took them outside, took them in the back, and took them out all yellow style. And at first, I thought that they were just shocked by my adept storytelling. Until a woman stood up and said, you can't say that. Genuinely curious, I asked her, I say, what can't I say? And she said, you can't say. And I was like, how you mean I can't say it? I just said it. Then she said that I am not allowed. I say, well, motherfucker, like, how you gonna tell me that I ain't allowed to say it? I thought this is America. I thought this was free speech. She said that it don't sound right coming out of my mouth. And then another fella backed her up and then said, yeah, it gave me the same feeling as when a white man says it. I look at them, then I look at my hand, then I look back at them in disbelief. So all my life I must have been white and just thinking that I was black. All of these documents that saying that I'm black is false. So when I get pulled over the next time, I could just tell them, I say, sir, you made a mistake. I am also of the baguette persuasion. And my girl quickly adorned her cape and came to my rescue saying that they're just not used to hearing it in your accent. That I could understand. But then another girl came and quickly interject talking about, no, you can't say it because you're not Adolf. I say, what? I'm Adolf? The girl say African descendant of slavery. I say, what you think I descend from? A tree? This goes back to my conversation on how African Americans have monopolized the right to grieve over racism. And that's a topic that I am much obliged to discuss at length if you would like. So just let me know in the comment that you should be submitting anyway in offering to the almighty algorithm. Along with your likes and of course watching the video all the way from start to finish. Don't play with me today. It's hot. It's 90 degrees in here. It's hot. I sweating. But the right to even say the N-word is a commodity. So apart from the obvious concept that are a commodity themselves in slavery, of course, let's look at the first instance of commercialized in minstrelsy. Oh, my leg. My leg, Jesus Christ, I hate sitting down for so long. My leg fall asleep, oh Jesus. I leave the bathroom fan on too, eh? Oh God. Okay, alright, I back. Anyway, America, the land of the free, and the home of homegrown terrorism, the burgeoning hegemon of the new world with one apparent goal, to be everything that their colonial forefathers weren't. But in pursuit of this goal, they had a few prodigious potholes, and one of them was, actually is, their deep infatuation and commitment to white supremacy, which manifested in many ways, one of which is minstrelsy. In Carl Wittke's book, Tambo and Bones from the 1930s, Wittke made the bold claim that the only purely native form of entertainment and the only distinctive American contribution to theater was the Negro minstrel. By damn. To think that America's only true contribution to theater is the racist parody of black people. My God, that's powerful. The locution, the exaggerated features, the humor, the dress. White people were, and for the most part still are, titillated by not black people in particular, but the stereotype. Wittke mentions that many of the famous minstrel men were northern born and reared, or foreign born immigrant white men who had almost no first-hand knowledge of Negro's manner of life. This boasts the notion that was a travesty, a black avatar that white people had made in their own heads. But they didn't stop at theater now. Oh gosh, no man, listen. The demand for minstrelsy was far too big to be circumscribed to the stage. So what did they do to solve this problem? Minstrel radio shows! Yes, big man and women and non-binary folk. In the 20s, you literally had two white men cosplaying as in Amos and Andy. This gotta be the Cool Runnings equivalent to white people bastardizing African American vernacular English. This Amos and Andy show was so popular that it became the longest running show in broadcast history. Even President Coolidge, Eisenhower, Truman, all of them say that they loved the show. Which brings me to the part that literally tore my mouth open wider than your date leg after you take them to the VIP room at the IMAX. CBS wanted to cash out on this minstrelsy wave. So they say they want to bring Amos and Andy to television in 1951. And good news, they didn't want an all-white cast this time. So hey, things looking up. Black people finally get to commoditize their own culture for once. An instance where white people aren't telling black people's stories. And no blackface. You know, this looks great, right? Right? You thought? CBS wanted the black actors to stay as close and as faithful to the initial interpretation of the show as possible. So much so that they got the original white actors to come on set to give the black actors direction. They had white people telling black people how to be like white people acting as black people. Jesus Christ, where's my tea? Listen, I have never seen more skullduggery than this in my 26 years. By far. This was the first commodification of in America's turbulent journey to actually living up to the credo that it so boastfully claimed. It is clear that in the credo of equality, America doesn't quite meet the mark, which makes one wonder if the founding fathers ever thought that black people should be considered equal. You know, at least don't put it in the founding documents like, you know, all the rest of the other countries. Like, if you say that you could do it, then why, you know, you didn't even have to say it. Imagine being black in America. Like why? Why would you? So anyway, slavery is abolished and you're experiencing freedom for the first time. And much like people who go off to college and experience freedom for the first time, you don't really know what to do with your freedom. So many black people didn't know how to be free. You know, some of them actually missed the confines of coonery, but the majority of them shuck off their shackles and jived on to freedom. But as time went on, you know, black people began to realize that, hey, you know, it might be me, but I don't feel as free as Fred over there. It might just be me though. I don't know what it is. Might be the whole Jim Crow thing that, you know, going on in the States. I don't know. So then black people said, I'm going to show my displeasure in the system by not abiding by the system. And thus, that white America loved in minstrelsy turned into the one that they love to hate in militancy. The long hot summer of '67. Riots in Atlanta, Buffalo, Cairo, Cambridge, Cincinnati, Detroit, Milwaukee. Damn, yo, was carrying on bad, boy. And the efficacy of rioting is debatable because the very things that we were rioting about then, we are still rioting about now. Yet if the white establishment refuses to listen to peaceful protests, then I mean, what other choice of recourse is there? More than minstrelsy was pissing off black people. It was the denial and refusal of the America that they saw other white Americans living. So this sudden uprising of black political activism changed the perception that white Americans had of black people. And let's do a little empathy exercise right now, just to put yourself in the shoes of the white people at that time, around '67 and things like that. You had race riots going on almost every other day that summer. You know, Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam. The very fist that the pretty boy used to punch people up with is now a black fist in solidarity of black power. You know, that's scary, you know? What if Ali hit me? So white people were very wary of, you know, this black power movement and this movement towards civil rights. And it didn't take long for Hollywood to translate that fear into an entire genre, talking about political black America. Then you had the war on the war on drugs coming up in, you know, the early 70s, when visibility of the militant black man was at its apogee. The public perception of was transformed from the happy-go-lucky African American that made you laugh to the violent and aggressive black man that you would see on the news. But the true pernicious power of this trope is not that it affected how white people perceived black people in America, but how black people began to even internalize these stigmas. The idea being that, well, if America's gonna see me as this militant malefactor, then I might as well do it. And while this wasn't the case for every black American, a great deal of inner city youth that grew up in the context of this stigma took it to heart. Imagine the backdrop of your formative years as a black child being cops, the likelihood of an impoverished household with an absent father, because that is the trope of the black family that a lot of Americans subscribe to, even black Americans themselves. So some black people embraced the villain, which brought us to this new edition of the gangster. Above all else, black people really just want to be heard, but the white establishment had either turned their ears or translated their cries and screams into violence. So to overcome this, black people turned to something that they've relied upon to cope and to communicate for all of their history: stories, most notably music. Back in the days of slavery, Negro spirituals were as much of a coping mechanism as it was a method of disseminating information. Wade in the water encouraged escaping slaves to evade sniffing dogs by jumping in the water. So this method of storytelling and music translated into gangster rap. Rap is synonymous with black culture. And like I said in the video on Lee Scratch Perry, Rap originated from sound sister culture in Jamaica and then found its way to the streets of New York. But the West Coast rapper Ice Cube is the paragon of gangster rap. He essentially saw what he was doing as an extension of the militancy that the Black Panthers were. Gangster rap was a method of political activism. I know it might not always sound like this, but NWA's music was extremely political. The profane chants against police set the tone for the refrain of a cop or defund the police today. However, somewhere along the lines, we lost the plot. Much like how horror films are entertainment that scares you, gangster rap became entertainment to scare white people. The target demographic of gangster rap shifted from inner city youth to white people that were titillated by black culture. It became an extension of shows like Cops, where the same black man that adorned the hood of a broke-down Honda was also the angry black man with sagging pants that rapped about drugs and crime. White America continues to commodify the concept of Dr. Dre is known as the architect for gangster rap, with a lot of his instrumentals being the backing for many of the most prolific and influential and seminal gangster rappers in the West Coast at that time. And in his defense of gangster rap, he claimed, America loves violence. America is obsessed with murder. I think murder sells a lot more than sex. They say sex sells, I think murder sells. You don't hardly ever hear anybody hollering about Oliver Stone or Martin Scorsese or Clint Eastwood and all the violence in their work. To me, the records and the videos that we make are just pure entertainment. And the fact that NWA's album became the fastest selling record in the country with no radio play is pretty much all the proof that you need. America loves, but understand the distinction. They love so much that making one or two of them rich in the process of pirating them is just a casualty of war that doubles as a defense of that all-American dream that they always talk about. All these ball players keep saying they're oppressed, yet they're rich. Must be that old systemic racism and American dream I keep hearing about, huh? So when you got white teens sagging their pants and reciting very violent and criminal gangster rap lyrics, and then you throw Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style into the mix, you now added this womanizing trait into the concept of which also allowed for the dehumanization of black women, just like the times of slavery. I already talked about how colonizers hypersexualized Jamaican women as a way of justifying their subjugation. So while gangster rappers thought that they were being oh so political, they were just evolved representations of Amos and Andy. And honestly, the sad part is that we're still pretty much here. At this very point in time, I mean, we pretty much juggle between different amalgamations of these tropes. Sure, there's people that wear the Carlton attire that give rise to the affluent black. But the resurgence of protests and riots, I mean, we're pretty much just juggling between militant and gangster. But the saddest part about this entire video is that we have a symbiotic relationship with the concept of. Think of how many shows like Blackish exist. Think of how much of black culture is to create commodities for white America. When I drive down into the college town in Iowa, they ain't playing Chris Stapleton or Sturgill Simpson, you know. They playing Travis Scott and Kanye West. And the optimist in me says that this is a great thing. We can commodify our culture and share it with the world, white people included, as it should be. But the pessimist in me shines a spotlight on every laugh that I've given to a white person. It makes me wonder if I'm their jester, if I'm their... The way that they all huddle around me, waiting on my next foreign musing. Am I just the Caribbean version of... Is this really a talent? Is this really a power? Or is it a parody? Who knows? And Fanon would say, who cares? But all I know is you need to top that if you ain't see that yet, because that articulates pretty much the bastardization of Caribbean culture, especially by Americans. Top that right now if you ain't see that yet. I can see it here.